Well, thank you for being here. Want to get this review started. We have our consultant on the phone, David Murphy from Along the Room. Thank you for being here, David. And we have administration and myself and Chuck. And we just want to go over some of these comments that we received.
So we did put together an agenda, not knowing, the size of the group. But, this is a structure we would follow, and sure, we schedule 2 hours, but if we do it in shorter, half an hour or less. But we just want to make sure we went through the steps here. Because some of the questions were about the other projects,
Right.
like the MVP project and coastal resilience. And so I had put a couple of slides together to try to help kind of explain the key parts on each. I think the important thing to know is we've got three.
Are these on the town website? Or they will be?
Not yet,
They will
but
be.
I'll be happy to put them up there.
That'd be great. Thank
But essentially, right, the community has many activities going on, and that includes the hazard mitigation plan, which we're reviewing now. But then we've also started the coastal resilience planning project, and then the municipal vulnerability preparedness program and that workshop that we had in January. So they're all sounding similar, but yet they are very different, distinctly, and we'll try to, clarify some of those differences. The hazard mitigation plan starts with the legislation of the Disaster Mitigation Act, and it's essentially pretty much a federal program to help localities plan for and reduce damages due to hazardous events, property resources, etc. And this is largely a FEMA-driven process document. So there's actually a FEMA checklist that, there's requirements that get reviewed, and if there's something that needs to be adjusted, FEMA will come back to us and we'll add that content. And it's a plan with a 5-year cycle, such that our last one was 2007, expired in 2012. We've updated the 2007 document to 2019, and that's the document we're reviewing here. And so this is the document we're going to focus our comments on tonight. However, there are components that do overlap with the work that we're doing on the municipal vulnerability preparedness program. And so this is a program that's actually administered by the state and Executive Order 569 to deal with the state strategy, to have a plan for climate change for the Commonwealth. And this is a grant that we received from the state last spring. And it's really to address resilience as it pertains to helping recover quickly after events happen. And you'll see in a second where this kind of fits into the timing, but there are, overlaps with coastal resilience or community resilience as well. And hence, this is one of the newer initiatives that came up, and we inserted it into the timeline. And we had started coastal resilience, and this is an activity that serves as good foundation material to finish that. And then, of course, coastal resilience planning was started just after the work for the update to the hazard mitigation plan. And so when we started this work I guess it was not last year, the year before, the end of 2017, we had started activities with the hazard mitigation plan and had that scope clearly defined. Our target was going to get the document together and get FEMA approval. And we have received a FEMA grant for that. MEMA grant. And subsequent to that, around December, very similar in building off the hazard mitigation plan, we started the coastal resilience plan. And that is not a grant project, that's state funded. And Malone and Broom helped develop the scope for that, and then that started with the workshops in early 2018 and the online survey. But, and David, I'm sorry you can't see these slides, but the work that we had done early 2018 actually led to 2 additional grant projects: the MVP project, and then the Coastal Zone Management 3D, modeling project. And so the gap that you see between, the workshops and the online survey and actually the, written coastal resilience plan has been extended so that we could actually finish the MVP workshop and report, to use that as content to add to the coastal resilience plan. And so this is very similar to the slide we had at the select board. I guess it was maybe in December.
Yeah.
And it did. I made some adjustments to show where we are now. Is it along the top line, hazard mitigation plan update? We do have the FEMA approval pending adoption, and so that's the document that we have in front of us today.
Maybe you're gonna go into this more, but the grants that the fiscal 2019 grants for the MVP and the CZM, we use those to work on drafting the plans, or what were those used for? Or are we still using them? I'm just
Sure. So these 2 projects, the MVP project and the CZM, are fiscal year based. So they're short duration, get the work done, develop a report or a product that we then can build and use in additional projects. And the work with the MVP project is largely that workshop report is going to get reviewed by the state, and their review then identifies Nantucket as a MVP community, which opens up many more grant opportunities for additional state funding. So it's important to get that work done because it does feed into our grant applications that we're going to put together for later this spring. And those are typically announced in April. And so that's what we did here is in the April timeframe, we submitted 2 grant applications and we were very successful to get both projects.
Multiple projects going on.
So we want to use the results of the hazard mitigation plan and the MVP and the coastal resilience to identify grant opportunities for FY20, 21, 22, and these are certainly living documents. So, what we have here is going to certainly change and get built over time as we get clearer on our needs or as we complete work. So this is still the roadmap that we're on, and there's a lot going on toward, this, March, April, May, June timeframe. And so this is the first document that has a mitigation plan. We do have the public review of the MVP workshop report scheduled for March. It's the end of March, and I think it's posted. And so that draft report will be released shortly. So now it's set last.
28.
Yeah, 28.
March 28th.
So
And will that be, is that a meeting, that'll be a public meeting?
mm-hmm.
And with the NPEDC attending, or what from the towns you think? Or
So it's going to be largely an open to the public because
Right, okay.
that first session was largely stakeholder driven, invited, very intense, and so we want to open this up for all comments.
Okay.
And so it's going to be largely a public review. We can add to it and then finalize the document. And again, that's very much just kind of a living document. It's a point in time. There'll be content that will certainly get fed back into the coastal resilience plan, and getting that document wrapped up as well. And so largely, these are documents that will help identify future needs, opportunities for future projects, grant opportunities from state, federal sources, even the town's capital plan. And so these are all integrated planning instruments. I think that's my last slide. Kind of, again, it's an introduction to hopefully, I know there's a lot of work going on in parallel. It's hard to keep them straight. I'm happy to answer questions to try to clarify it. So shall we go into some of the comments that Maureen, and I'm sorry, we had one more person join us?
Mary.
Mary. Okay.
And Chuck, I have copies of all the comments. I have 2 letters. Is that everything?
We did receive, I didn't forward it to you, I apologize. We did receive some today as well.
Okay.
David, so bear with me and I can email it to you.
All right. So.
All right. Well, I have at least the 2.
Okay. All right, just sent it.
Okay.
All right. So let's start with what you have.
Okay, so I guess to address your comments, Maureen, from
Yeah.
from what you sent this morning. Basically, I think we just discussed about number 1, about the where we stand with the grant. What with MVP is a new process. That's the state hazard plan, federal government. That kind of makes a difference. I think since 2000.
Yeah, no, I mixed those 2 up. So
Yes, which is it is confusing. It's very confusing. Which I think my understanding is Charlie Baker, the governor, is kind of being a front with this whole topic with the federal government. He went in front of the House or something. Well, I heard on the radio, but anyway, which is a good thing.
So we never failed to qualify for MVP.
Correct, because
This
it's
is
a
the first
new-
time we're getting it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes,
So
this
what
is
was
a
the,
new-
other than the HMP itself, was there something else that we should have put into FEMA in order to get FEMA grants after the HMP expired?
When the HMP expired in 2012.
Yeah,
We were, of course, we weren't allowed to get any FEMA grant, any type of funding
Right,
from FEMA. Only state. So I do know that there are projects the town did get money for from the state, for
right,
CZM
right, no, you
grants, yes.
mentioned that before.
And there are
Okay.
projects that emergency management has done and plans and whatnot. So it wasn't that the town wasn't getting anything, it's just the federal component of it
Okay.
was what went away. And I think there's more mechanisms with, and well, I guess bite at the apple, if you will, in the update that gets us in that forward momentum. And as you can see from what Chuck provided with all those other things that are going on, we're going to be able to acquire those funding sources in order to achieve those actions. So, and then the question about, or comment about, the executive summary. My understanding is that, well, I don't know if Dave, did you get this email I just sent you at all?
Yeah, I just printed it so I could have it not be on my screen, so I could have the document on my screen, but I just ran out to get it. I don't think I missed anything while I was running to the printer.
No, we're
It
on
looks like the,
number 2.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. We're on number 2.
yep. So it sounds like really what's needed is just an executive summary that's kind of more user friendly, not for FEMA. So I think that could be accomplished, and it sounds like to me it could live separately than this document. I mean, that would be my suggestion, that there's a version which is maybe just a little bit shorter, to the rest of the comments.
Okay.
That's exactly, Dave, this is Maureen Phillips, that's exactly what I had in mind. Cause I know we've gotta get this to FEMA and it's gotta be in its own little package.
Yeah.
But, and especially I know for the town, but also just for, the rest of us, the residents, 700 pages is just too much to plow through.
Yep, no, I get it. I mean, this is something that we've seen these plans grow in size for 15 years. It's not pleasing to anybody that that's happened. And yet, here we are. So, I understand I get the comments about readability. They're very technical documents in some ways. They're just wordy. So that was comment two. I guess it has sort of two parts, A and B, or are those separate comments?
Well, B is really getting at the fact that in the about somewhere around page 190, there's a box that says how erosion is the worst hazard we face on island, and let's see it's page 6-4 in the pagination, which I really find personally annoying, which I think I made clear. You can't find anything in it. And so putting together, since I happen to live in Nantucket, and several of the members of our working group from the Nantucket Residents Association are literally sitting on the Ames Avenue Bridge section. And so finding something in one place that doesn't seem to be, hooked together to something in the other place. Again, I understand this is this technical document, but there's that little box there, that on this page saying this is the primary risk. That to me is something that, that's the headline. That's the headline to me, and that not page 190, 178. So, I mean, it's that kind of thing in order to be helpful. So that's a very specific example about at least what we think, should be provided. So maybe that's something, again, you can put into the executive summary. I'm not saying that this doesn't make the report wrong, but it's just odd.
Well, I mean, I guess the text boxes are an interesting thing. They are sort of to help FEMA kind of get through these in a more readable way. And we like to highlight little quotes or such that come out of the planning process. But if it's not helpful because it draws attention away from something else, I mean, it's not really worth having it. So I guess I'm wondering if this, and we're talking again about the one on page 6-4. So the FEMA requires that every hazard the risk of every hazard be profiled. So every hazard that you address in the plan, you have to say, the high risk, the low risk, whatever. You're supposed to use the words high, medium, low, etc. You can use variations of that. And so what we're doing here is just basically saying that we've heard people say this is the primary risk. But in reality, every chapter, every hazard profiles each hazard's risk. So every hazard has a risk profile in this plan. This box doesn't change that. If it's not a helpful box, it can go.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, I think it is a helpful box. It's just kind of how it's highlighted so far into the report. And, to me, that is something that should also be a headline, in the executive summary at the beginning of it. So the town needs to set priorities, and we know, say that earthquakes are not something we probably have to spend a lot of time on. But obviously erosion and coastal flooding, when you look through it all, so it's really, hitting the highlights. And I was just saying, you've got a highlight kind of buried in the middle of it. I mean, I'm not asking you to respond to every last thing, and I'm not trying to wordsmith the whole report. I'm just pointing out things that I felt made it more clunky, quite frankly. So, and I understand it's a government document and all of that, so really all of this is something that you can address in what you redraft. I mean, that would be certainly fine with me. I'm not speaking,
Okay. Do you think it'd be helpful to talk about the RL properties a little bit?
yes, I would really like to hear about that.
Because so the RL properties, the repetitive loss means 2 or more floodplains gets you on this list. And of course, a property can only be on the, everyone can hear me okay, right?
Yeah.
No, you're great.
A property can only be on the list if there's an SIP-backed flood insurance policy in place and claims are made. So if a property doesn't have flood insurance, or if someone has flood insurance and doesn't make claims, you simply can't be on the list. So the list is, nobody loves the list in the real world because it doesn't really give us a great picture of flood losses. There could be 100 homes that are damaged by a flood, and if nobody makes a claim, nobody ends up on the RO list. So that's sort of my soliloquy. Part 2, what I wanted to say was, the repetitive loss list is something that's only available, the state can give it to the state can give it to the town of Nantucket, and there's privacy implications with the list being released. So you're not allowed to put in a hazard mitigation plan addresses of the RL properties. You can't produce a map that has dots on the RL properties. You can kind of draw a box or an oval around them to give a general area of where they might be. But the feds are very concerned that if the list were to be public, there could be speculation about real estate values, that sort of thing. So that's why the list isn't in the report, and I personally would love if we got to a period in time where we could identify the properties and say more about, what's causing the flooding and exactly what's going on. So that aside, that's why there's some mystery in the report about the RL properties. And for what it's worth, I apologize for that. I don't know if there's not much I can do about it. So I think what we could probably do is maybe make sure that going forward there's maybe a definition or a disclaimer or an explanation about, these barriers that we have to discussing the RL properties. For what it's worth, what FEMA requires is that they are mentioned, not specifically, but in general, and there must be, this is so funny to me, there must be a table that describes how many there are and if they're residential or commercial or industrial. And you cannot say the location or anything that could identify the properties. So they want you to talk about something yet not talk about it, which I find to be not helpful. So this is probably all stuff that you've also thought in your head about this. How it's a little bit frustrating. So given all that background, what would be helpful in this plan? I guess I'm asking the people in the room. Or is it enough, maybe what's in there, given the background?
Well, the just again speaking for myself as a public consumer of the report, I was under a completely different assumption that this, clearly this has a federal government definition that requires that you filed 2 claims and you have to have done that, and so that right there, that would have been, oh, okay, now I understand.
Yeah.
So I think that would be good to
Kind
put
of
that in the report.
kind of a footnote or something.
Yeah, so that
What-
people understand that.
Yeah.
And then it just makes me think, and maybe this is a total side thing, the idea of identifying the places on the island that are at most risk is a great idea.
Yeah.
And I know my neighbors, who are more than happy to tell you what number on Nantucket Road and Ames Avenue they live on. That, you know, the ship has sailed in terms of what's your property worth and what's gonna happen and all of that. So I think maybe that's a town thing, and I understand now what this RL thing means technically, but I think the concept is a really good one. If we can have a real kind of designation where you've got, you know, areas that people know to be concerned about, you know, when we have an event, and homeowners that need to be notified even though they're off island and all of that. So most of what I was saying was that this seems like a really good thing, but let's do something, you know, why aren't we doing more with it? Now I understand what it really is, so I wanna suggest, and this is not part of this report, but maybe we can, you know, think about, you know, Chuck maybe, or in the resiliency plan, or somewhere else. I mean, there's clearly a place where we could make some kind of identification like that maybe, and I'm not saying you have to do that, I'm just thinking, that's certainly what I was thinking about.
And some of it is, how are we going to have that conversation as a community, right?
Yeah.
And right, yeah, I think we're building awareness that we're going to have these needs, but how do we engage people so that we're not, you know, threatening people or, you know, singling out properties,
Right.
Or building inequities.
Right.
David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember having to basically certify with MEMA in order to give you the information in order to utilize it within the plan. They probably have regulations and to do, not to do with that information, am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's correct. And we had to know that we had a contract for the hazard mitigation plan, which of course NEMA knows because they
Right.
funding your contract, so they didn't have any doubt there. But we had to show that we were the consultant that was under agreement with the town to do this, and you know we have to promise not to share the information, that sort of thing. But you know what you can do with it going forward is you know the place where the RL property is really represent risk most accurately is and this is not really a big surprise, is Brand Point. There are more homes there that are flooded, and many of them make claims. So I think that there's things that the town can do to kind of work with the data going forward to kind of let it inform mitigation actions, and that's something that can be done over time.
Thank you for that clarification, it's very helpful.
We'll be receiving, you know, in order to address that action, I, as the coordinator, are gonna have to know exactly what I can do as far as providing
Right,
information.
What information
Exactly.
you're able to share and what you cannot share.
Yes.
And so that's, I understand that you can't, that's a line you can't cross, and so
Right.
we'll just have to deal with that oddity.
Right.
It's kind of like you have to, the patient's really sick, but I'm not allowed to tell you
Well,
where the patient is and,
yeah,
you know, everything else. It's kind of
very, very
typical
similar.
government.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and
Let me know what else in the letters to jump to, and we'll go there.
absolutely, we'll go to the addendum one in a minute, but I wanted to address one other thing, that Maureen brings in her letter. She brings a good point about the windshield surveys that was referenced in the plan. And contacting them without doing snail mail. I agree. I think in this day and age, we can do email, maybe do some type of a newsletter, something that kind of goes back into.
But so that's why it has to be
Right.
like this secret
Yes.
windshield survey. Oh my
Yes,
God.
so
Sorry.
again, I mean, and that's something that I wanna know too, as well,
Yeah,
is what can we do from a town's perspective without crossing that line on the federal government side? The last thing I wanna do is get the town in trouble.
Yes. Me too.
And And then your actions, the critical research recommendations. Do you want to go over that?
Yeah, I just the more those research recommendations, which I found, you know, when I first read it, you know, a couple weeks ago, I was just thrilled. I mean, we are thrilled to see that. They're critical to the coastal resiliency plan, and also, as it's mentioned, to the harbor management plan. So I just want the town to be super aware that this is a threefer. You know, we get this done for the island, and we can use it in many places. It's going to help Concom. It's going to help the emergency management people. I mean, this would be a tremendous asset for us to have, and I know it's not cheap. I'm just guessing it's not cheap, but I think to have an action plan that we get going on this particular thing as soon as possible, because it will take a while, and it can be done. I was discussing this with Mark Borelli, you know, from the Center for Coastal Studies, and you know, it's something that you can do. You would do the town waterfront, then you could do Nantucket, then you could do Tom Nevers. I mean, you don't have to like go around the island, you know, like you know, in one big circle. So we could prioritize what we want to start with. And so to me, this is just an opportunity to highlight, and I'm very, very glad it was in there, just not, I wish it hadn't been buried.
Right.
So I would recommend putting that in this executive summary or this different report. And I'm just speaking on, you know, to Libby and, you know, everybody else in the town administration, that this is just so valuable, and it would be, would give us so much more data, and we can make better decisions about so many things. It's not the be all and end all, but not having this is a real deficit in our planning capabilities. So I really think we need to add it, and since it's, you know, it's valuable across the board. So that's what I have to say about that.
So I know I've been having conversations with Libby about that project. This is the Mark Borelli sand and sedimentation.
I don't know what I can totally say about it, but we've been approached by a couple of groups to help partner with us on this. It's costly.
And who?
It's costly.
Oh, yes.
So we can't really do too much until we have some money. But it's definitely on our radar, and these couple of partners that have approached us, I'm hoping to get a meeting with them sometime in March. Determine how we're going to fund it and get going on it at some point. We do have a potential funding source, which is a grant through the state for coastal resiliency planning through an economic bond bill that the state issued at the end of last summer. We need to find out more about what the parameters of that grant are. It's perhaps still a bit early to understand that. And we need to get a better idea from Mark Borelli about the cost and the scope, and determine through procurement if that's a sole source procurement or if we need to do an RFP or RFQ. And so there's a lot of admin work that needs to be done kind of in advance. And we don't have lots of people sitting around waiting for admin work to be assigned. But we do have a couple of things in the works on that, one of which is a potential grant from Remain to help us establish an office.
I'm sorry.
Remain.
Oh.
To help us establish an office of sustainability and or resiliency. We have a position that is in the fiscal 20 budget that would be primarily dedicated to coastal resiliency issues, the plan and the implementation of it, and some of the associated plans that go along with it, like the hazard mitigation plan, some things there, the harbor plan update, Oh, there's one other one.
Dredge plan.
The dredge plan, yes,
Oh, right.
thank you. So things like that need to be coordinated, integrated, monitored, moved forward, implemented. We have a couple of personnel resources that are on the horizon for that. So we're moving towards them, and as you I'm sure know, the wheels of town government do not move very quickly, but we're doing as best we can to move them.
Yeah,
Slightly
we
quicker.
understand the town's not sitting on, a block of money that they can distribute,
Yeah.
Instantly. Just trying to, be extremely clear about a priority that a lot of us think is.
Yeah, we've
is-
heard it.
And I
yes.
understand, I totally understand, so.
We've heard it loud and clear. And Chuck, as he mentioned, has had some discussions with Mark Borelli about it. It sounds like he's done this on the Cape and other places. So we definitely want to pursue that.
Thank you,
But,
Olivia, I really
well,
appreciate knowing that.
Well, thank you for bringing it forward. It's good to know that there's support out there for it.
And maybe we can, I also, something, there's a lot of resources, a lot of residents on island have experience and resources on some of these things, grant writing and knowing all that. And so it also occurs to me that maybe we can reach out to the community and see who could, do some of the research work or something so that we can facilitate things and not have to spend town money on it, but use the resources of all of us who live on island. So
Yeah, that could be helpful too.
No, I think that sounds great, and we'll take you up on the grant writing.
Yeah,
That sounds-
because the grant writing, not everybody's cut out to write a grant.
it's not the most fun thing to do.
No, it's not. And I always want to know what all the strings are and there's always a lot of reports that are required. Who's going to write them? What are the deliverables? Who's going to prepare them? What are the timelines? Who's monitoring all of it? There's,
And then you got to sell it, right? You got to make it
Yeah.
attractive because these are competitive grants.
yeah,
Oh,
why is ours?
So there's a certain
great.
amount
No,
of
there's a
fluff
real-
and real, kind of.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I'm sure we
Nailing
have
it.
people on island who've had experience.
Yeah,
in it,
no.
so that's just a thing to kind of put in our back pocket to think about or whatever.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to hear that.
That'd be really helpful. Thank you.
So David, moving on to the addendum that you helped us provide from the select board meeting.
Oh, right, okay, the 2-pager.
Yes, I provided that to Maureen because she was happy that we were trying to address it, but at the same time, there were some things in there that she didn't like, so I provided it to her to ask for some feedback on that. I will say that based on those clarifications, she's wanting both A and B to be deleted completely. Now, both A and B have to do with the Sconset beach, and looking at the draft, that was actually new information that was provided, not from the original 2007 document.
Right, because 2007 things were sort of just getting going
Right.
up in the air.
Right, and the political world about this whole concept and this whole issue, I should say, it has changed. I think everybody has agreed on that part. I have received a comment from one of our planning and economic development commissioners who's also on the Concom, who actually gave a recommendation of not necessarily removing it, but putting some type of statement. Because my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm a planner, but I'm not a hazard planner, so this is all new to me too. But that we want to at least have it notated in the plan, not necessarily saying that this is what the town wants or this is what the island needs, so to speak, to kind of get us away from the, referencing a third party that may be, not everybody is on the same page with.
Right.
Okay.
Well, so the background here is The background, so as you noted, the DNA of this was kind of in the 2007 plan because it was, things were just getting underway and it wasn't yet decided what was gonna happen. So really, the crux of what we're trying to convey with all this discussion is two things. Number one, that the town has the capability to address erosion, and maybe other examples that are better. And number two is that the town has the capability of working with associations to address erosion. So we're not endorsing or the opposite of endorsing whatever it is, what happened. We just need to say to FEMA, look, Nantucket wasn't born yesterday. They know that there's risk and they're gonna find ways to address it. And again, what's important about that is if you look through the checklist for hazard mitigation plans, there's a whole section which is sort of predicated on making sure that the town's capabilities to address all the hazards are described in the plan. If you don't address the town's capabilities in a plan, it can't be approved by FEMA. So we just need something that's going to, so I think what I'm going towards is replacing this with an example that shows the town's capabilities of one, addressing erosion, and two, working with organizations, maybe not Wisconsin Beach Preservation Fund, but other ones, just something that shows the ability of the town to work with organizations to address hazards. So I'm open to ideas. If there aren't any examples at all, we can sort of back off of this entirely and try to describe. And the plan does address other capabilities of the town, so it's not as if we don't have anything at all.
Right.
I know you used the examples, because I kind of polled people that I knew, what are other examples, and Hummock Pond, and also the work's already been done in Nantucket, as well as, and Quays, I guess, those were the three that came to most people's minds, and I think you had already mentioned those. So maybe to, I don't know, beef up the mention of those plans. I'm sure there are other projects. It's just, this one is so sensitive.
Mhm.
It's like if we can avoid mentioning it and keep with things that are, are more town or community based, because this is a nonprofit. I mean,
Right.
it's a whole different kind of animal.
I'm just concerned that it's come this far.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just concerned that if we eliminate it completely, and they know about it already, regardless on the way the town stands on it or not, it's known. So I'm just concerned that if we just wipe it away completely, that might, they might not like that.
Well, it's a fair point that Holly makes because we described it in the 2007 plan, although it wasn't constructed yet. We sort of set it in place as an example of something that was coming that may or may not help address erosion. No one knew at that moment. So I think it would be nice if we could say something about it. And what we could probably just say is that it happened. I mean, there isn't anybody that could dispute that the project went forward. Maybe saying less about it is just what we need to do. I mean, as a person from FEMA can go out and see it and know that it's there. So maybe we try to find something that we can say that's just very brief.
Yeah.
It doesn't carry any implication at all.
Just that it's there.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we do.
yeah, I
need-
mean, it's just, but it's right now, it's an ongoing
It is.
approval right now to expand the project. And, it's not, what may happen to the project, well, I guess it doesn't really matter to worry about what's, if 5 years from now, if it's that this project has been determined to be, it has been unwound because it didn't work. I mean, that's part of the reason why I would just not put it in, because that certainly, and I'm trying to be just as factual as I can, but that certainly is a possibility given the report that was just filed by the outside consultant from Woods Hole about how that project is working and whether it's going to be successful and everything. So I just, you know, it's kind of a minefield in a way, and so maybe, you know, so that's why I really sat and I tried to figure out a way to put it in there that left it as neutral as possible, and then I was really concerned about putting in something that may come back to bite us, so, you know, that was my worry.
Yeah, and rightfully so. I just think I think erasing it completely is not a good move.
It'll be in a title,
It's kind of, I think it would be like putting on blockers. Like we don't like it, so we don't think it's there. I mean, that's just my blunt opinion of it. I don't know how we want to word it. I can read what I got from our Concom rep, from the NPC.
who was it,
Andy.
oh, Andy,
Yes.
Andy Bennett,
Yes. And he, he understood, that he actually agrees that it makes sense that the Baxter Road project is mentioned in the plan, and he suggests a little rewording, and of course this can be obviously tweaked. But he says Baxter Road Erosion Control Project is a joint public and private project protecting a portion of Baxter Road. It is a coastal engineering structure of sand-filled geotubes used in combination with sand nourishing plantings. And the bank above further help to maintain the upper slope.
Who said that?
This is from Andy Bennett.
Okay, 'cause the only thing I would say about that is it's not a public-private
Right, and I
partnership.
think it was.
It's a private effort, totally.
So we need to do.
it is portrayed in SBPF literature as public property.
Yeah, I think we want to portray it as a private effort, and I understand the concern about mentioning and not mentioning it. And I don't really know how to categorize it or characterize it, but it is a very large, very well-known project, which maybe it's an example of property owners taking matters into their own hands, and that's another reason why we want to get more of a handle on coastal resiliency planning.
Mhm.
Because I mean, let's face it, they're also not the only ones. They're the only ones who have a project of this magnitude, but there are homeowners on the North Shore too that have erosion control projects as well.
So I guess, David, that's page 614 through 615 on the top. Is the red, I guess.
Right.
That was added, I should say.
I was looking at the clarification sheet, but it's just
Yes.
copied out of those pages, right?
Yep. Okay.
Well, alright, so I think maybe what I'm hearing is a suggestion to portray it as private and use some of the language that the Concom member provided. Is that possibly what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Say that again.
To use some of what Andy suggested.
Oh.
I'll take out the.
Correct. Is that kind of the direction that we're going, but also, as Lindy just said, make sure that it's not called public-private.
Correct. Yeah, I guess I'll email you that verbiage that he provided.
Okay, yeah, is it electronic or something? You can just throw it in an email?
Yep.
Or whatever?
Yep.
Yeah, good.
I can do that. But yeah, I just something that I don't think we want to completely take out. And then really the change to C, which was from page 6.3, that was just adding to what you already had on there about gas emissions as well as other factors noted on page 6.5, right? You, Maureen, you were okay with that,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, which
That's
makes
the kind
sense.
of thing just
Kind of
drives me mad,
circling it
so,
back
yeah,
together.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I hadn't realized that, so
Yep.
thank you again.
Yeah, the Swansea thing. I don't know if maybe we want to have a statement in there that we understand that it's a controversial project. I don't know how far we want. I know.
I would just stick to sort of, what can be viewed with the eyes, and maybe, it's funny because I looking at the old one just now, we have a sentence about, remember the strange dewatering type system that was going on, and it was those enormous wells over the beach, and
Yeah.
I think we actually said something about how that was attempted, but the results were not favorable. So, the point being is that a 5-year plan presents what's happening, and then 5 years later, you can change your tune.
Right.
If you find something that's not working, you can own up to that and have something different as your description. And that's what happened 10 years ago. We had this statement about, I'm probably calling it the wrong thing. It was like a beach dewatering type system. I think that was put in and tried, but didn't really do anything.
No, they've been trying things there for about 25 years. I think that they just had their 25th anniversary. And remember the big, the tiers of,
Yes.
of plantings, and
Yep.
that was another thing. So maybe it's, I don't know, yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to look at Andy's
Oh, yeah,
numbers,
absolutely.
if you would mind,
Yeah, I
and,
can send it.
you know,
I'll send it
if
to
you feel it's
right now.
necessary to have it in, that's one thing, but maybe it can be, yeah. Yes, and I'd be happy to take a look at that, see if there's something we can figure out that'll make everybody happy.
I will say if this helps to plead Holly's case at all, FEMA does put the old plan and the new plan side by side, and if we took it out, they may wonder whatever happened with it. They may not get fired up about it, but they would notice it. There's particulars looking at the old plan versus the new plan.
But of course, the old plan says it's publicly funded, and, that's, I assume one can explain to them, oh, that's an error, and so we took that out, so,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think that would be all that difficult
Yeah.
to do.
So I just sent that. Hopefully that came in. I think that addressed. The original comments from the addendum as well as what you provided today. I think we already addressed. Yeah. The addendum addressed what NCC also indicated that you did. So.
I think it looks like the February 12th letter without, not the NCC letter, but the other February 12th letter, that's similar to this one that we just went through. Oh yeah, it's Medicare Resident Association.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't do another letter for the Coastal Conservancy because we had dealt with those issues, and so we didn't feel we had to reiterate what we said, but, the two groups are pretty much in agreement, so I just did one letter this time.
And I think I know I addressed at the select board meeting that we're acknowledging that this is a town-wide, island-wide, department-wide project. We've already started working on discussions of the actions before we even have the final approval, whose jobs to do what, all those type of things, where the funding source is coming from, and I think we even, when we had our meeting, went through and go, oh yeah, this is something that's in process, oh yeah, that's something that, so we've already started to check those boxes, if you will, which is a good thing, yeah. We're a lot of this is working together, so. I think we're doing good. I think that's it, unless there's any other comments.
Any other comments? So next steps.
Well, what's the date of the meeting now to adopt? Is it?
That would be
The 6th.
March 6th. Next Wednesday.
Okay. So Holly, send me that language really soon, so I can get moving with it. And
Yeah, I sent it. You should get it.
okay, oh great, is that what just arrived? Okay,
Yes.
good.
Forward from Andy.
So we'll get sheet revised quickly. And I don't know that we have to go back
Sarah?
No, Sarah's a MEMA, so the FEMA person is Brigitte.
Okay. She's the one who sent the original approval for pending adoption email?
Yes, yep, she is, and no, that's her. I can't say her last name, but I'm not gonna try.
Okay.
I may give her a call off the record and just try to work through some of this.
Okay.
And for people in the room that might sound fishy, I'll just sort of say that FEMA is persnickety about changes and after the approval of pending adoption has been issued, they have a program, they claim they have a program that can compare documents and it can quickly find any word that's been changed. To which I said, I think the
I
whole
want
thing
that.
was ridiculous, you guys have to do that.
Yeah, you can do
I
that.
know you
Pretty-
can do that with PDF documents, yeah.
PDF and Word, so I'm sure, so that's how they spend their time.
Great job to have.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll work out those details,
Yeah.
get things together, bring it to the select board.
Yes.
Well, we gotta have it in the packet
Yes, we,
for,
yeah.
for
I do have to provide something for administration to give to the select board for Friday. So I guess we'll touch base with you,
yeah.
Dave.
Yeah.
So I think we're in good shape then.
Well, if we could get at least a summary of what we're putting forward without maybe the exact words by Friday. If we had the exact words by Monday, that would probably be okay. But I think the board will just want to know in their packet, what did we talk about and what are we looking at modifying?
So we'll try to get it done by Friday.
Yeah.
I think we can.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's make it.
Now, just in the original, in the updates executive summary, which that's a few pages long, right?
What's the question, just how long the executive summary is?
Well, if are we looking at to revise the executive summary to address, or just a separate?
Maybe like a separate fact sheet.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, just
separate.
like, like
Yeah.
the FEMA has theirs, I think we can consolidate that to a kind of a companion document. that can go
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I was sort of I don't know if it's possible, I was envisioning kind of an addendum-like thing.
But I
Look at
think
that
Maureen was looking for like, what's the real essence of, in 2 pages.
Yeah, something that you can.
Yeah.
It's really synthesized, what the takeaways are.
And correct me if I'm wrong, David, on this, this would be something that we, as far as the town goes, can put with the top of the document, but not necessarily would this be going with the document to FEMA.
Correct, so let's just play this out. If I call Brigitte and said, we got a couple word changes we wanna make in a couple sections, and she says, fine, just do it, then we're gonna do it. And she says, no, we really can't have those word changes that you're describing because we'll have to review the whole thing over again. What that really just means is adding time. But if she says that, then we'll do it in the clarification sheet as we planned, and you would adopt both. You would sign the resolution just as it's written and send that in, we would send that to FEMA, and they would essentially know that the plan that they reviewed is adopted, and you would keep that clarification sheet with the plan, and you really want it to be with it. So 5 years from now, if we're all gone and the next person takes this over and updates the plan, those things are then incorporated directly into it. But over the course of those 5 years, you're also letting yourself be guided by that clarification sheet. So 2 possible outcomes. We'll talk to Brigitte, see if we can make the word changes in the document, we will. If she says no, I'm really not comfortable with that, we'll go back to the clarification sheet and go from there.
Could we also have like a kind of a local clarification sheet, or even some kind of a cover letter on the town website that just explains, it doesn't have to go to FEMA, but it explains in sort of layman's terms what this is, what it's intended to do, how it gets modified
Mhm.
every 5 years or
No, we definitely need
that kind of thing.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Is there anything else? I think we have more information. Maureen, anything else?
Oh, no, thank you.
No, great. Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for putting
Yeah.
the time into reviewing this document and pulling these details. David, anything before we let you go?
No, I just scanned the NCSD letter just to make sure there wasn't something that we missed, but I think we covered most of it. The letter that they wrote is very technical and full of, information about how the project's been performing, but we don't even need that for this to do that. So, we're good.
Excellent. Well, David, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, David.
Well, thanks everyone.
All right.
Okay, I will, you guys want me for anything else, or I'll just go ahead and hang up?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and let you go. We'll catch up.
All right.
We'll catch up tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.